What's up, guys? So in this video we are going to be making a turbo manifold for the VR6 engine, and I'm going to be showing you guys what I'm using to make that, and I'm going to take it up, get the GT40 mounted behind the engine. In the engine bay there's a big spot for it, and we're not going to buy a manifold. There's a bunch of cast and even tubular manifolds available, but they come at a steep price, and with the welder that I got and skills, I guess you would call it skills, that I have, we're going to be making our own. My brother got this cylinder head maybe a couple weeks ago from the junkyard because it's a 3.2 liter and the valves are bigger or whatever, more flow. And he got the headers that came with this engine. We kind of tacked this on there, so don't even pay attention. So he took these headers and cut off the pipe that was originally on these and going down to the downpipe, whacked them off, brought them into work, and he skimmed that surface to get it flat again. So he did that to both sides. And what our idea is to get a manifold, a little collector thing that we have, and run this one into it, run this one into it. It's going to be a Twinscroll, and we're going to basically merge all these together and get this thing mounted. That was the 3.2 liter headers that you just were looking at. These are the 2.8, and with the 2.8, that compressor housing literally doesn't even fit from the firewall right here to the engine cylinder head. And it's just way too big. So to have it down in here, these things are beefy. And there are people that make manifolds out of these, but I think they're using like a T3 style turbo, which is like a smaller, all around smaller turbo, like in general. And I think they're able to fit it in here. This is what we were gonna use at first, and then we tried to put the turbo in here and we were like, this is never gonna work. So we opted for these on the 3.2 head and skimmed them off. So them are like ready to be welded on right now. And what I got here is my first step into building the header, the manifold for this turbo. I tacked this piece of 2-inch to the flange. This thing should be parallel, straight, whatever you want to call it. And I'm gonna make a tack, just one at the top. You can already see there's been a tack there. And I'm gonna put this on the car, make sure it's all straight, and basically start from this, and like I said, just kind of merge these into that. And with this length, I'm almost positive the turbo will fit in the engine bay. The problem is this compressor housing is absolutely huge, and there's not that much room for it. So here's how the flange looks, bolted up onto the engine. And since I only have it tacked in that one spot, I can still flex that bracket around. I can flex that flange around. Super straight. It's super parallel with every surface. So I'm gonna tack that a little bit more, and I'm gonna get that thing to a point to where I can comfortably bolt the turbo on. That turbo is heavy. So I'm gonna weld that up pretty good, pretty solid, and see what we got after I do that. All right, guys, this is it. I think that's where it's gonna live from here on out. So there's plenty of room behind the turbo against the firewall, and there's plenty of room underneath for the intercooler piping and downpipe to run. We're gonna run this up and out of the hood just to speed things up and run this thing before the season's over. There's a good shot here for the air box, like the air filter. Dude, I think this is it. So I'm gonna start working on the other flange and getting more pipes welded up for this turbo. So super convenient that we have this cylinder head sitting here, because we can bolt up the flanges and everything's exact. So pretty much I need to run another pipe from the flange to flange, and it's on a little bit of an angle unlike the other one. So I calculated it's about a 10-degree angle total, which means I need 5 on each side. So I'll easily be able to get that, because on this saw over here, you can move that little backrest right there, and you have options as far as angles go. It took me a second to make and get them angles right, but I think that's what I'm gonna go with, and it lines up literally perfect with the holes, and it's a little bit on an angle like this way, and obviously it's angled up that way as well. Bolts are tightened up, so these flanges should be pretty flush. I'm gonna tack this thing up, probably 4 corners, and take it off and see how it looks. So got it tacked up, looking good. I'm gonna move over to the next hole and start there, merge all these things together. So I just cut a bunch of these little pie cuts. They're at a 10-degree angle, and what I'm gonna do with all of these is I'm just gonna kind of build them up and bust like a 90 around. So I'm just gonna weld these things together, similar to this piece, and it'll eventually build an angle, and I can turn these and get different like compound angles, and I'll be able to blend this thing together super nice. So got this piece all welded up and just tacked together to hold it together so I can make sure it'll fit, make sure it's looking right. And I think I'm gonna add, well, obviously one more piece, and it's just gonna come straight off of that into here. I might have to grind some of this flange away. But yeah, I'm thinking this is gonna be this little runner to the turbo flange. So after a lot of grinding, this is what I got. It's the best I can do with that little pedestal grinder right there. The stainless is tough, man, but it fits on that port super good, and I got it outlined right here. I just need to stay inside, probably like 3 or 4 mil, and make sure it's a little bit small, and tack this thing together. Alright, so I finally got done cutting that hole out, and as you can see, I kind of had to get into that flange a little bit, but it's all good. And this thing literally matches up like perfect. So if you're doing any exhaust work like this, and it's stainless steel, which is super hard to cut, this stuff is like, dude, stainless sucks to work with, really. And you need to cut holes like that or like that. You definitely need to get a carbide burr on this little tool that we have, and obviously I have a Dremel with a cutoff wheel and a regular grinder with a huge cutoff wheel, which I can get on some of these angles, but not all of them. Yeah, it's just stainless is super hard to work with, and it's some tough stuff. So I got that piece tacked up, and I bolted it up to the cylinder head to make sure each flange was like parallel with each other. And now that that's tacked, I'm gonna take it off and weld this up fully. I got that piece all welded up, and next I'm gonna start working on that. So I got my hole marked out right here, and this is the piece that I'm gonna use for this side. And I'm gonna cut that out and then see how this does. This piece I was able to use the angle and just one pie cut to get this angle right. And I think this is gonna work. It'll speed things up a little bit, and I won't have to cut all these. So I got the hole cut, and from here, I'm just gonna use that carbide burr to open this up and fit this as best as I can. And then we will tack it and be done with that side. I got the hole all done, and I think it's good enough for me to tack this thing up. And there it is. So I'm gonna do that real quick, and then we're gonna take this manifold off and put the wastegate up against like the engine and see where it needs mounted. I'm gonna just drill into here, and my brother's gonna get the turbo lines all figured out, the return line and supply, see how long the lines need to be. So the turbo fits freaking great. We're gonna put the wastegate right here, and we'll easily be able to get to the springs, and it's also easy routing for the pressure line for the wastegate. And tomorrow I'm gonna finish up this side of the manifold, and then we can run this. We're gonna run this out the hood, and we're gonna run the wastegate out the hood as well, just to speed things up. You're never gonna find that. And dude, this thing should be started this weekend, so we'll be ripping on it soon. Boast. So I need to take this off and build on that side, get them 2 other cylinders done. Oh yeah, I also got to do the wastegate, which is just going to come straight up and off of this, which will be easy to get the springs in and whatnot. Just cut a bunch of pie cuts on 10-degree angles, and this is what they look like. before I deburr. They're super nasty, and the chop saw does good, but you have to deburr all the crap that is left over. So I got all of my little pie cuts all deburred, and it leaves a really nasty finish on the inside of this bore, also on the outside, and you have to use a burr on the inside and the grinder on the out. Dude, it's so nasty when you cut it with that chop saw. But this is what I'm going to use to build on the other half of my turbo manifold here. So I'm going to mock this up and get this like looking good and tack it and freaking knock this side out and start up this car. So I got this piece all tacked up and it's ready to be like mocked up to this. This is the part that really sucks because I have to grind like a ton away. As you can see, this does not line up perfectly to that. So I pretty much just grind this on the bench grinder, and it sucks because stainless is very hard to grind and it just doesn't, it's hard to work with. And I also have to get it in line with that port. So a lot has to be ground out of here, and for this thing to like fit and work right. I don't have the right tools, so this is extremely hard and takes so long to do. But this turbo manifold is gonna work, and it's not maybe gonna flow the best, but dude, I'm just a guy in the garage trying to make stuff happen and have minimal tools. So this is what I got to work with. So after grinding for like a half hour, I finally got the inside to where it's pretty clean, and I tigged all of this up so it would be solid for me to grind past these welds, and I ground past that too. So got my hole marked on my flange and my main little passage right there, and basically I'm just gonna cut this out, tack this up, and then one more and I'm freaking done. I still need to do the wastegate, but we're getting closer. So the hole is in that main runner, and this thing literally matches up perfect. I've been using this little rotary tool with a carbide end mill in there, and dude, that carbide end mill, which is a 1/4 inch because this has a 1/4 inch collet in it, that freaking thing eats. If you're doing something like this and hogging out holes and a bunch of material like on this flange right here, the stainless flange, you need one of them 1/4 end mills because, dude, that thing freaking hogs out some material. And here's what I was using. I have this carbide burr, that's a pretty standard one, and here's another carbide end mill, and you need one of them for real. You might as well buy one right now, because I'm gonna also get one that's small enough for this chuck on the Dremel, because I have a little chuck for that, like adjustable chuck. So yeah, carbide tools is definitely the way to go for anything like this. Got that tacked on pretty good in several spots just to try to hold this thing in place, because eventually I'm gonna have to take this thing off and put it up on my welding cart and weld it up solid. There's spots like in corners that I'm not gonna be able to get to with it on this cylinder head. I just want to get it to where it'll hold everything flat. So I think this is the piece that I'm gonna try to use. I'm just trying to get like an idea of how long and how, you know, just all the different measurements that need to take place. Here it is in all its glory. It's just a piece of pipe, but it fits. So basically what I'm gonna do is trace it out like I have done multiple other times, and cut this hole. Here's what we got. Pretty much the final product. I just need to weld it up solid. I got some good tacks in here, and I think this will hold it flat, hold it straight like it is right now, bolt it up. Then we can drill a hole here and then a hole in that one for the wastegate. It's gonna be a divided wastegate all the way up. We got the MVR44, the Tial. So here it is, all done. Everything's welded. It's welded the best I can. And we haven't really checked for leaks, but just by the way it looks, I think this is it. I'm going to use a single wastegate with a Twinscroll. So I have to divide the 2 into 1 up into the V-band. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but people do it and they say it works good as long as it is separated well, which I have this piece of stainless here. It's like 3, I forget the number of stainless, but it's like super good for high temperature stuff. And so I'm gonna use that, and I don't even know where to start. So I've been cutting and chopping and grinding like crazy. And this is kind of what I got. I'm gonna tap into both sides right there, and got them too. I'm gonna trace this out and whack this one, and then I'm gonna use that plate to separate both of them. Still need to work on a little bit. There's a little gap right there, and make sure it's the right height because I don't want this thing too high. Here is the V-band that's gonna sit on top, so it'll be something like that, and it'll hold that tile up on there, and then the dump is just gonna go right off the hood. With the downpipe, it's just gonna go out the hood right now as well, just because we're trying to speed things up and get this thing running before it gets way too cold. So as I'm trying to hold everything with one hand, I'm gonna set this camera down, grind a little more on this, and maybe tack it up, get this together, and then show you guys what I got. Here it is. I just tacked these on just to kind of get them right, and I cut that off to where it's smooth. Here is the V-band with that little valve thing in there, so that's gonna be it. But now I'm going to cut that back off and make that little separator piece in between both of them, and it has to go up into this and almost touch the valve to try to get a good seal in between both of these sides. So I'm going to cut off these, and I need to bore out them holes in here too, and I just marked them inside with a Sharpie, and I'm going to bore them out and do this, and we should be good with the manifold. Hole for the wastegate is made, and I just bored it out with my carbide burr, which absolutely sucks, but got it done. And now I need to make the plate that separates both of these ports and make it go up into the V-band for the wastegate. So here's my piece. I got to trace out on the piece of stainless, and here is the V-band, and you can tell that that piece is way too tall, which is fine because I'll just trim it down and go from there. Obviously it's too big, and I did trace out the inside of this, and I'll be able to weld it directly on, and it'll separate each side. So I'm gonna get the old grinder out and have at it. Alright guys, so I haven't picked up the camera for a little while. I've been grinding and welding, and dude, this thing is a freaking mess. I just tacked on the V-band, and I'm gonna show you guys what I got so far before I go weld it up solid. So that sits there, and then come over here, get the wastegate. It'll sit right there, and it's low enough, it's not gonna hit the hood, and it's not gonna hit the turbo or anything else. And as you can see, that thing's there, and it's a little bit too high still, which is fine. It hits the valve, so I need to still grind the centerpiece away, which is no problem because that little collet comes right off. So I'll be able to fine tune that to where it's almost hitting the valve. Just wanted to give you a little update before I weld this thing up solid. It's been taking me hours to get this thing done, but it's super tight against like the wall, the bore of this hole, and so it should be sealing real good, and it'll also be super close to that valve. And I just test fitted the exhaust manifold with the Tial wastegate, and I can get a couple fingers in between the top of this vent and the hood up here. It does hit this little, I don't know what you want to call this, little insulator kind of thing that hangs down, and it hits the top of this, but I can it doesn't hit the sheet metal of the hood. So this thing is looking great. This is going to be perfect to go up and out the hood, or eventually go down into the downpipe, or just straight down to the ground. So yeah, dude, this thing is freaking looking good. It looks really good, and I know the turbo fits. I've already tried that, so I guess I'm gonna take this thing back off, weld this up solid, clean this thing out super good with soap and water, get all the chips out, make sure all of it's super clean. So I got this wastegate thing all welded up, got the little divider in there. You can see my welds popping through the inside, and it's super tight. This is a little seal for the wastegate. Get this, and I had this valve out of here, and I matched the profile on the inside of that. This thing, darn it, I only got one hand. Fits on there. Dude, it's so sweet. I need to clean it out tomorrow and mount this thing up, mount the turbo on. I checked earlier, this doesn't hit the hood. We are all good to go. Manifold is pretty much done. I cleaned it all out, deburred everything on the inside with a carbide burr, and I've been tossing around the idea of making another bracket on the bottom of this that goes to one of these M10 holes in the block, just because the turbo that we're putting on here is super heavy, and I know it's gonna be bouncing around back there, and I just think over time something might crack or I don't know. I just want to make another bracket to stabilize the turbo hanging off this thing. So what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to use the two that are like in line with that flange and make a bracket that comes up to the bottom of this that bolts on, so it's not like attached to this flange. It's gonna like unbolt. So here's just a cardboard little template that I kind of got that I'm going to use to cut out a piece of steel, and this is another one, and it fits right there. And I think that's kind of what I'm going to use, and I'm going to bolt these two together with just like two M8 bolts, and it should be strong enough to hold that. I did cut out a couple pieces of steel right here. I need to basically mimic these little pieces of cardboard that I made. I also need to bend this at whatever angle that needs to be bent at, and also drill all the holes that are needed to bolt this thing up, weld it to this, and that will stabilize the turbo that hangs off the end of this thing. Alright guys, so I got my piece. I got my 10.5 mil holes drilled for the 10 bolts. There's a little bit of slot, a little bit of clearance, and now where's it at? I got a mark somewhere right there. Yeah, right there, that I need to bend this thing at about a 45-degree angle. I need to set up my press brake tooling down there into the press and bend this thing. So I got my piece kind of temporarily bolted up. I did cut that down a little bit, trim this down a little bit also, and right there I'm going to weld that on, and I'm going to drill the bolt holes first, and I'm going to tap this backside so I don't have to worry about nuts or anything. So yeah, basically that is it. And I'll just have this little tab on this manifold, and if you ever have to take it off, it'll be easy and not have this whole thing attached. So here it is. I drilled these two clearance holes in this small piece, tapped the back, M8. My bolts are a little bit long, they're kind of sticking out, but that's not that big of a deal. So you can tell there's no paint on this piece, which is because of the welding that I'm going to do. I'm going to tack this piece on here pretty good. Tacked it on a couple times, and now I'm going to take it off, weld that up fully. But I just wanted to add that I put these in such a way that this manifold will come off and that will stay on. So I got this bracket all TIG welded up, and now I'm going to clean this thing off super good. Take my little bracket off of this engine block, put it on the real one, and mount it up, freaking hopefully start this beast up, and hopefully everything works out. I think we're good.